Caribbean people are passionate about life. They are creative and industrious. They recognize that the road to the future lies within their hands and want regional leaders to chart a path towards socio-economic advancement. Welcome to this edition of CARICOM File, where we'll take a look at some of the important issues facing the Caribbean community from Barbados' perspective. The people of the Caribbean have come a long way and are not daunted by the external forces that threaten to rob them of their destiny. Having shaken off the shackles of slavery so many years ago, the region is poised for greatness and prosperity.
Heads of government of the Caribbean community and of associate member states and spouses.
The road to regional integration and economic resilience started over 40 years ago in Trinidad and Tobago with the signing of an agreement called the Treaty of Chaguaramas. This accord gave birth to CARICOM as we know it today. Every year, CARICOM leaders meet for two major summits: the more informal intersessional conference early in the year, and the formal regular meeting during the first week in July. Prior to these conferences, decisions are made at the local level so that Barbados' position is made clear.
Okay, so God is telling you for the next 3 years that you're into a period of total decline because of international...
Hailed as an outstanding trade unionist and champion of the labor movement, historian Robert Bobby Morris is part of the team that ensures Barbados' policies are tabled at the regional level in his capacity as Barbados' ambassador to CARICOM.
I was appointed in December 2011 and came into office at the time when there was a dispute between Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the fishing, people who had been arrested. It's also in terms of putting the context around the time of the Myri affair, but of course that did not go to litigation until sometime after. But the origins were around that time. So it was a fairly hectic period to come into the ministry and into the position. So I've been here, as I said, since 2011, and that means I've completed 3 years, and I'm into my 4th year. I'm on contract generally of 2 years on each occasion, so I'm into the second contract.
The ambassador must attend many meetings and negotiate a better path for Barbados against the framework of the regional agenda of fostering greater economic enfranchisement and a better life for Caribbean people.
My duties are to represent the government, and particularly in the area of negotiations, so that CARICOM, as you know, has a secretariat operating from Georgetown, and that secretariat operates a number of very important agencies. By Monday, I'll be in Georgetown at the Council of Trade and Economic Development, what we call COTED, and we'll be looking at a number of regional issues relating to trade, economic development. Sometimes it's related to single market and economy. What we have is an agenda of several issues, and then Barbados will have a position based on a brief that we will have, support from the cabinet to put the issues from Barbados' perspective. I will have, generally speaking, officers from the various ministries associated. I will have the director of trade there. Sometimes we'll have the permanent secretary, and then I will have somebody from the focal unit, that in this case is Paula Bayer, representing issues coming out of that particular area. So our position is to go to the agenda, to speak to each issue and make sure that Barbados' position is put.
Prior to attendance at regional summits, there are a series of meetings with local stakeholders to clearly outline Barbados' position.
What I find interesting in terms of where we are in the Caribbean and in Barbados is our understanding of talking and what it means. The role of, first of all, ideas, developing ideas, is fundamental in terms of national development. And transferring an idea into a reality, whether it's a business, whether it's an agreement, that calls for talking. There's no way that you can achieve these things without talking, because in many instances, our views might not be the same as the person that we have to deal with. The views or even the advice that economists might give us might not be the same advice that is, for instance, the private sector might want to give. So only by talking, and when I say talking, there's so many different types of talking. We don't go there arguing. We don't go there just discussing either. When we sit down to talk and we use all the various types of communication that are possible, all the various forms of social dialogue, it is really about getting answers, and it's about making decisions. So fundamentally, those decisions are going to be written up in reports. And once they get the approval of the bodies concerned, particularly the cabinets of our country and so on, then we expect implementation after that. But I don't see how it be possible to implement something that you haven't given full discussion to. And I think that's one of the problems that has dogged CARICOM for a very long time. When people hear that a decision has been taken, they sometimes assume that automatically that decision will be implemented.
Yes, it's true. Caribbean people have been moving freely through the region for decades now. But this freedom of movement has been regularized and specific categories defined.
The CARICOM leaders get together and decide that there will be free movement of persons. And they set up categories, 5 categories, let's say. They say sports persons, media persons, university, da. But that's only the beginning. Because a technical group has to get together now and define, what do you mean by a sports person? What do you mean by a media person? When you say university graduate, what categories of university graduates? And from what institutions? So the redefinition and the clarification of the deeper issues is done by a group of technicians, technical people. For instance, if we're saying a group is called artisans. Now, there is the world of work out there, let's say carpenters, masons, and construction. Already people are defined in certain ways. Somebody is an A-class worker, a B-class worker, C-class worker. And that is not necessarily done by any scientific analysis. It is done by the employer. The employer has brought in his workers. Somebody starts at, let's say, a laborer. And then after that person has worked hard enough, the person says, instead of just mixing mortar for you and bringing stones and bringing tools, teach me now how to put up the side of a wall or something like that.
With freedom of movement, some challenges have emerged because all CARICOM countries do not have the same resources. Therefore, finding common ground is really a work in progress.
And Barbados probably has the best arrangement that there is. As you know, we have an extensive medical service in terms of polyclinics, in terms of the QEH. And right now, those emergency services are available to citizens of Barbados at no cost. There's a perception that they should be made available to anybody at all, whether you're a citizen or not, whether you're paying taxes or not. But there are countries in the region who don't have those services. Their services might be private services, and therefore you start out by assuming that you have to pay to use them. How are you going to get, for instance, an arrangement in CARICOM that says that if Barbados agrees that because it now has a system where its people, its citizens, will get those services free, that will open that benefit to everybody who comes here, everybody.
As the envoy asserted, Barbadians need to make the most of the opportunities that are available and see the Caribbean as the desired place for travel and work.
Well, the discussion, for instance, in CARICOM was really about what will happen if you are a skilled national. There's a special category of person, which means that you would have to get the accreditation and the certification, and you might get therefore rights. But the discussion wasn't about the skilled national, it was about anybody who comes. Now, all that would happen is that people would target Barbados and come here. Already, all costs of servicing or health services is tremendous. There's a whole debate about looking for a new model in terms of how to handle this. So you have to talk, and you have to take positions, and you might not easily reach agreement on these matters. And it's not about a lack of willingness. It's not about not wanting to have a single market economy, but it's about realism. A lot of what we have to do has to be very, very real. When you're talking about bringing countries from extremely diversified positions, social, economic, and otherwise, onto a common and level plane, there's a lot of adjustment that has to happen to make that a reality.
Although Barbados's representatives will do everything possible to make sure that this country adheres to the spirit and practice of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, there will be some hurdles to climb along the way.
I'm sure that no country will want to be in a position that by helping to improve others, that they decrease their own status and the living standards of their own people. So it's a balancing act, and there's one where you have to negotiate always with your own peoples. Same is true, for instance, if we take an example of Barbados and education. We have pre-primary education. We don't have it for everybody yet. We want to get there. In most of the other countries in the Caribbean, any pre-primary education is provided by the private sector. When it comes to primary education, it's compulsory in Barbados. So we have to make that available to all Barbadian citizens. If people come from outside and they want to use our school system, they have to pay a fee. They have to have, first of all, the immigration status that will allow you to get it, and then pay a fee. Same with secondary education. We are spending so much money in terms of tertiary education. Polytechnic, community college that you can do a degree now, University of West Indies. And we've now had to move to a position where it's no longer free as it was before. You have to contribute to some extent to your education. How many countries have the community college that we have, the polytechnic that we have, and so on? So the question is, if you put all these countries together and you have to develop a policy that people are going to be moving freely, the question will be, what access will they have? Because it will not be a reciprocal thing if people from Barbados go elsewhere.
So as CARICOM leaders continue to chart a path for tomorrow, we must work hand in hand to realize our dreams as one people. And that brings us to the end of this edition of CARICOM File. See you next time.
We welcome your feedback on our programs. You may email your comments to bgisfeedback@barbados.gov.bb. You may also view our website at www.gisbarbados.gov.bb or subscribe to our YouTube channel, the BGIS.
Tune in and watch programs produced by the Barbados Government Information Service, Sundays at 7:30 p.m., Mondays at 8 p.m., and Thursdays at 8:30 p.m.